Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this seventh presentation for IPEMA. And it is indeed a pleasure for me to share something from my clinic. So I'll be sharing a short case from my clinic in the following presentation. Let's begin. All right, let's begin. So this was the case of a 33-year-old woman, and she has been referred to me by an acquaintance of mine, who's also a friend of hers. They work together. So when the first lockdown began in 2020, this lady noticed that my patient was sounding very down on the phone in the morning when she would call her. So she was very concerned, and knowing the situation at that time, she felt that she would need a little help, maybe even psychiatric help. So she referred her to me. This lady has a past history of severe fibromyalgia, which is now under control. She's following a whole food plant-based diet, a complete vegan diet for quite a while. But she's really worried that the fibromyalgia might flare up again. And she has severe food-related acne issues. So I said, okay, let's begin. Tell me what's happening. So she says that since the lockdown began, I have issues with sleep. And I'm tired all the time and I end up waking up only by noon. And she says in the extended family, there have been a couple of deaths. And all around me also, because of this COVID, there have been some deaths. And she says, I'm very concerned because these deaths are affecting my health. And she's saying, just like the lady M who referred her to me, she's also preparing for a long 10-kilometer run. She was also preparing for something known as a triathlon, wherein you have to swim, run, and cycle. So she says that I'm not able to do that. Also, she says that this year, the main concern is that I have set this year aside in order to conceive a baby. And we had decided this in Jan, but soon the lockdown began, and perhaps our plans are put on hold. But it really triggers me when there are babies around me, when I see people around me having babies, and when we meet our friends who have babies, it really triggers some experience within me. So I said, okay, it's important that we understand all of this. So I said, tell me a little bit more. She says, I'm into self-healing. But of late, what is happening is that I am being very negative. And even if somebody does any energetic healing for me, I'm not able to receive that. And she says, I'm tired all the time. And I have not gone out for a walk or for a run since a month now. And what happens is that if I'm not able to exercise and keep up with my training, it really brings me down. And it's like a cycle. For me, it's like a spiral, which brings me down. So this was the gesture that she did. It's like a spiral which is moving downwards. Regarding her work, she runs a vegan food blog, and she does something wherein she tests out the recipes in her test kitchen. She prepares it, she photographs it, and then she, puts it up on her blog. She also does a lot of live cooking. So the end-to-end of development of new recipes, which are whole food plant-based, is what she's doing. She says, but even in that, I'm losing my interest a lot and I'm not as engaged as before. I do feel very tired and my muscles are quite tired. And before the lockdown began, I was eating very healthy. But now what I've noticed is that I tend to stay up at night. I'm binging on sweets and snacks and just sitting in front of the TV and vegetating, indulging in a lot of comfort eating. And when I asked her what she normally craves now, she says that I crave a lot of sweets and fried snacks. And if I open a bag of chips, I really cannot control myself. I end up binging on that. Otherwise, she says, I have issues with food. I've always had issues with food right from childhood. Currently, I have uh, investigated, and they found that I have a milk, egg, gluten, and chicken allergy. So she says, I'm not able to digest these proteins. But turning vegan and turning whole food plant-based really helped me a lot. But now, with this lockdown, I've begun eating unhealthy again. So she certainly has issues with food. So she says, along with this, I feel very sad and uneasy and restless. I don't want to think. And then I become very hyperactive. And the thoughts, these cycle of thoughts, they get aggravated at night. Regarding the baby issue, initially we thought it was infertility, but we conceived once naturally without any external help. And there was some issue with that pregnancy, and we had to have an induced miscarriage. So we are trying for an IUI, or what is known as an intrauterine implantation. But she says the miscarriage itself that I had was so traumatic that after that, I have kind of become quite undecided and anxious about having a kid. I'm feeling very conflicted and helpless. I really don't know whether I would be able to go through with it. Earlier, there was a lot of anger that I'm not conceiving. Now it's very confusing. I'm not able to go through my emotions about this experience, because also I don't have anybody to talk to. All our friends whom we know as a couple, they all have kids. So I end up avoiding friends who have kids. And this really triggers me. So this is a very strong trigger for her. So I said, okay, since you're saying it's a trigger, let's understand what fear does it trigger within you. What is the experience of that trigger? So she says, deep down, there is a fear that my kid may be born with a handicap. I had such kids at school, and they have to struggle, and they have to work very hard to cope, and it's very sad for me because it's no fault of theirs. When we check whether I have egg reserves, the egg reserves are fine. But this conception thing is also there at the back of my mind all the time. What if I may damage the kid physically or mentally? But what if that kid is also damaged? This is what is stopping me basically from being very open to have a kid. So I said, what is the meaning of damaged? What does it mean to you? I don't want to understand what damaged means from my head. So I want to understand what is the experience of damaged for you. She says, what if the child that is going to be born, which she's yet to conceive, so her fears are getting ahead of her. She says, what if this child is retarded or autistic? I would not want to put the child at risk. If there is a natural conception, that's always better. But the first natural conception ended in the induced abortion, and there's a lot of negativity associated with that. Now, this one, they're saying that they would have to do an intrauterine implantation. So this is like an external thing that is happening for me. And she says, I think about the first child also, the first pregnancy that was aborted. She says, maybe that baby didn't even want to be here. That is the reason why the abortion happened. These are the kind of thoughts that are going through my head. But this year we have decided, because I'm 33, that it's make or break for having the baby. So what also happens is that when this kind of pressure is set, then the anxiety also increases. She says, I don't know whether natural conception would still happen during COVID time, because we're always anxious about that as well. So I would have to stay indoors. I would have to make sure. I don't know what would be the effect of the virus on the unborn fetus. That I'm also anxious about. She says, if I think about it, there is anxiety around this whole issue. And I feel that this anxiety is all around me as well. I would even go so far as to say that the atmosphere itself around me, there is death in that atmosphere. So she says, there in the extended family, the people that we know, acquaintances, there have been so many deaths during this COVID time. It's all very, very scary for me. So it means that there's a lot of uncertainty around me, and I'm not dealing very well with it. And also with regarding the area of my work, job-wise, there's a lot of uncertainty in the future, because my work involves training people, meeting groups of people, speaking to them one-to-one. And I don't know whether such a thing would be possible in the future. When would this lockdown end? So that uncertainty is also adding to my general anxiety. So she says, if not that, what should I be doing then? I'm really overthinking things a lot because by nature, I'm quite cautious. I'm not a risk taker. There is a lot of restlessness. I find that I'm very anxious at night, especially when I'm alone, I'm walking around the house. And if I decide on something like tomorrow, I want to finish this particular recipe, I'm not able to see those projects through. I'm not able to keep up with the projects. She says, it's not that I'm disorganized. I have a list of things to do. But coming to that, getting to begin it, I'm scattered and I'm quite distracted when I begin that thing. I feel as if I should plan better. Maybe I'm quite unplanned and haphazard. So she says that this stress about beginning that project causes more stress, and this is the cycle that I'm caught in. This is again the hand gesture that she does. So she says, to avoid all of that, what happens is that I'm just sitting there mindlessly watching TV and mindlessly eating junk. She says, somewhere I do think that if what I'm facing right now is depression, I have always been depressed from childhood. So she brings her childhood into the picture. She says, I'm the sort of person who can't make long-term friends. I'm very overcautious and I'm very hypersensitive to what people say. Because of that, I'm not never been able to have any long-term friends. I would fall sick all the time. And she says that even in the school, I would be quite reserved. I would not openly go and speak to the other kids. And she says that when I would fall sick all the time in school, I had a dairy allergy in the school days. So I said, okay, tell me a little bit more since you brought up the childhood aspect. Tell me a little bit about your childhood nature. Because it's very important for us to understand the uncompensated state that exists in childhood. And we can have then access to a lot of their childhood fears because these fears and this state really tells us the basic nature of the person, and we have an access to that. If in the current scenario, if they are quite conscious about what they should describe their nature as, we often find that patients find it far easier to describe their childhood state because for them, they have outgrown that particular state of mind, not realizing that for us, these issues, this nature is something that is true. It stands the test of time. And we can get a lot of information based on their basic nature if you explore the childhood. So I said, okay, tell me about your childhood a little bit since you brought it up. So she says, of course, I used to get hurt very easily. You know that. I just told you. But my mom was not the very easiest person to get along with. She was not very, she was not rude, but she was a blunt talker. So we'll understand what this blunt talking means to her when we understand the whole case. But she's somebody who's looking for a certain aspect in her mother and she's not able to find that in her mother. And she says, somewhere I didn't fit into my own family. If I look back now, they were very different from me. Even in school, she says other kids were very different from me. And I find that I used to always be somebody who used to be a little bit outside of the other kids. I would not fit in with them. I said, okay, since you mentioned your mother, tell me more about the relationship with your mother, your relationship with your mother. So she says, I know that my mother treated my sister differently than me. I'm the youngest in the family, and she was the outgoing and the good looking one, according to our patient. And she says, I wasn't very liked in the family because of my dark complexion. I was very directly told by many people, the extended family, be like your elder sister, dress like her, with the understanding that then you will be liked better and you will be accepted. This is what our patient has internalized and understood from those advice or comments. So she says it made me feel very inadequate. It didn't matter to them, to my family, whether I was there or not. I wasn't accepted and there was nobody on my side. There was no support. I was even quite suicidal in school and I stopped expecting to be accepted by my own family into this family. She says, however, I do remember that there was this one teacher at school whom I used to listen to. She was very caring. So, on the one side, her mother is a very blunt and straight talker and almost borderline rude. Whereas this one teacher whom she used to listen to had those qualities that she was looking for. She used to be very caring and she used to almost nurture her like a mother. So, this is what she was looking for. So, you get both the sides of how she experienced her mother and how she experienced the one teacher who was very good to her. She says, I used to be able to tell her a lot of things, but there was nowhere else I could express my emotions. I just, as a kind of rebellion, I would never do what I was told. This was the only way that I could probably be noticed. So, this is what I would do. Now she says, I have a very good looking, much better looking husband than, what. If you look at me, my husband is very good looking and I have amazing in laws. Yet, she says, somewhere inside that self destructive anger is there within me for all this is a kind of resentment that has built over time because of the feeling of not being accepted by one's own family. This is built up in her and she experiences it as a self destructive anger. She says, if I just look back on my childhood, I do remember being left alone to my own devices most of the time. It was to me, it was as if no one was there for me. It was as if I was constantly doing things to prove that I was worthy of being in this family, or looking for that acceptance in that family, or spending my time not doing what I was told. So either I would try to do things to fit in, or say, okay, you're not going to accept me, so I will not do the things that you're telling me to do. These were the only kind of two aspects of my behavior that I remember from childhood. At a particular point, I would then get quite resigned that there is no use complaining. You have to deal with things in your own way. And I would try to distract myself. I said, okay, I need to understand this because there are two, three issues within this. One, you're talking about your mother, relationship with your mother. You're talking, on the other hand, about not feeling part of the family. And every symptom that is going forward is reinforcing that deep feeling within, which is still existing as a resentment right now. So we must explore this aspect further. So I said, tell me a little bit more about your family dynamics. Instead of asking for specific people, this is another general way of asking, tell me more about your family dynamics. Because then that way, the patient will in their mind put the issues according to the order of importance themselves and tell you which is the issue which is most forefront in their mind. And then you will understand that this is a big issue for them. And the medicine somewhere has to fit this aspect. And when the dilution of symptoms occur, this is one area that you have to definitely re-explore and ask, okay, so now how are your family dynamics compared to when we began? So this will give us a very clear idea in the follow-up of how things have improved for them regarding these aspects, which were at a forefront for them when the the first consultation was taken. So she says, I feel still quite unaccepted by the family. I feel quite alone and lost. It's a very kind of nobody wants you kind of types, very unwanted kind of feeling from my own family. She says, as a child, forget my family members, my parents, my mother especially, but even the house help didn't like me. Very few neighbors even liked me or spoke with me. I would find it very difficult. There was a lot of self-hatred within me because I felt that I was not accepted by them. It's as if whatever you do doesn't matter at all. I wanted to do something, some contribution, some help to the family so that they would notice me and accept me. But my family was just not receptive, and I was almost always at the outside of things, looking in. I was left alone with my thoughts. It was a very painful and lonely childhood. So she says, whatever was needed for a happy childhood, I never got it. So now, obviously, she connects this herself to the main issue, her feelings for, in her mind, her experience about, what her dynamics with her going to be born child would be. She says that I'm very wary of bringing a child into this world. What if these childhood experiences have damaged me to such an extent that I cannot be a good mother? I just don't want to feel anything anymore, she says. So imagine she's connected it to the main feelings with her associated with the issues which are at the forefront. She's connected her childhood feeling, and she's also extrapolated it into a kind of future about her relationship with her as yet unborn child, whom she's planning to have today, this year, maybe. So these issues are across space and time, and they're connected very nicely. So this is a very important issue, and the remedy has to cover this because she herself has made that connection for us. It's very important. So I said, okay, anything more about the childhood experience? She says, of course, like I told you, I had no friends and I'm still not open with people. I would have these dreams somewhere of falling into a deep pit. I said, okay. So again, she has gone back in space and time. She talks right now also she's not open with people. But in the childhood, she would have dreams of falling somewhere into a deep pit. I said, okay. What was the feeling in the dream? So the dream is important. It is again something that is true across space and time. Because the experience in that dream is very real even today. If you and I have a very painful or a very scary dream, and even if we now recall it, we can experience all that we experienced when we had that dream, say when we were 6 years old. So dreams are true across space and time, and they are very, very important. The feeling in the dream is extremely important. She says it was very scary. You don't know what's at the bottom of that deep pit. If I can see the floor, even now, before the lockdown began, I was learning swimming. So for me, the pool has to be very clean and I should be able to see the floor of the pool. If I can manage to look down and see the floor of the pool, I'm okay. But in this pit, the floor can't be seen. It's a deep, dark pit, and I don't know what could be there at the bottom of that. So I said, so what is the feeling like when you can not see the bottom of the pool? She says, for me, it's very anxiety inducing. It's as if I'm slowly drowning. I said, okay. So she says that I also have another dream of animals chasing me and I'm getting bitten. It's something like in the movie Jumanji. I'm lost in the city and all the wild animals, they stampede through the city and I'm somewhere at the front of that stampeding crowd of animals and they're chasing me and they may bite me. I wake up with a racing heart and I'm very fearful, and all these racing images are there in front of me as if I'm watching a TV. It's a TV-like effect, even though I've woken up for me. That dream is very, very real. And it's very unsettling for me to have this. Most of you would have seen this movie Jumanji, and you remember that there is a stampede of animals across the city in that. It's a very scary occurrence. So she says that for me, this lockdown has only made this underlying anxiety very, very bad. I cannot meet anyone. And to top it all, there is a cemetery very close to my house. There are so many deaths, and it's as if it's all very close by for me. And I'm really startling a lot when I hear the ambulance sound every day, because it used to never be so frequently that there would be an ambulance going near my house, past my house. And all these uncontrollable feelings then come up. So then I'm so fearful of all the things associated with that death, funeral processions, attending funerals, hearing news about people in the extended family falling ill. I'm worried about my parents' health, and because they're in another city. And all of this gets very worse at night. I'm walking around the house in the dark, just picking up things, putting them somewhere. The TV is on and I'm there and I cannot sleep even though I'm very, very exhausted. Then I end up sitting in front of the TV and eating something mindlessly. So then I said, then what happens? What is the experience in this when with all of this anxiety, and deep down, what are you experiencing at that time? She says, somewhere I feel I'm not enough. I feel my husband would be happy were I not there. before this whole baby thing began, my husband and I were very happy as one unit. Now, this baby thing, I've set aside the year for that because I feel he expects to have a child somewhere. And then I feel somewhere I'm letting him down. Then the pressure of that is on me because I have to conceive. He loves kids. And somewhere it should be that if I don't have a kid, maybe I'm not giving him what he wants. Am I being cruel if I decide not to have a child of our own? She says the family have been very supportive. But these are my thoughts, my anxieties regarding the whole having the baby issue. In the morning, I wake up because I spent a restless night. I sleep late. There's a lot of brain fog. And I'm just distracting myself with food when I wake up again. And the digestion is also very, very sluggish. So the food issues are coming up again and again and again. So she's reinforcing it for us. So we have to understand that the remedy should cover the issues with the food and the eating and associated with the kind of low kind of feeling, the binge eating, the sluggish digestion, waking up in the morning with a fogginess in the head, distracting oneself with food. It has to have all of these aspects. So I said, okay, tell a little bit more. Let me understand this. She says, I just want to do all of those things very practically that don't require any feelings. It's only when I'm cooking, when I'm doing my things, my blog activities that I'm really very involved. Otherwise, I end up watching crime shows where, I don't have to engage my head at all. I don't like family dramas. I don't like happy things. I don't like happy endings because somewhere I cannot relate to that. I just want to be blank, just watch the screen and not think at all. Or previously, I would, to distract myself, I would go for a 10-kilometer run or I would go cycling for 20 kilometers. Now I'm not able to do that. There is always some sort of confusion in my head. I'm not confident about what I want to do. So she says, even this talk, our friend acquaintance was telling me for the last couple of months, but I had been postponing it because I just don't want to even believe that anybody can help me. I'm not open to the healing that anybody can send me. And I'm just stuck in this cycle wherein I'm not feeling good. That leads to me not feeling good further. And then I'm eating, then the healthy lifestyle is all set aside. I'm, doing all those things that, I'm actually advising people to avoid. I end up doing all those things. Unhealthy eating, binge eating, night watching, mindless eating, junk, and then feeling unhealthy about it. Again, this spiral comes up. I overthink and then I think, okay, just let it be, forget it. She says, but the end result is that I'm not liking myself that much anymore. I don't want to do things for myself. I'm just looking at the food and not liking it, but just feeding something within me. So she says, not thinking is what I prefer. I would just prefer to be blank and just sit there and watch something. So she says, I had another career. She was working in a particular sector and she was doing very well there. Then she decided to come to this whole food plant thing. And here also she had made good beginnings. She was doing very well. So she says, but for me, the shift was about getting healthy, calming down, because in the previous job, I had very, very different hours. I was not eating properly, and that's not conducive to having a healthy child. So I moved to this whole food plant-based thing. I wanted to somewhere change. But then I felt that even this change to the vegan lifestyle was forced upon me. The doctor was saying that, you have to eat better, you have to eat healthy. So I somewhere feel that even this lifestyle was forced upon me. Even for me, the fact that I can't digest this, I can't digest that. I have issues with milk products. I have issues with chicken. I'm not even able to digest that fact that I have issues with digesting these things, she says. Then really a very tremendous anger comes up because I would really love to cook as a child. This was one of the things that was comfort giving for me. I was not accepted by family. I was on the outside of things, but cooking food for myself would always give me comfort. And then that was also taken away, saying that you're allergic to this, and eat only this limited number of things. So I said, okay, let's go back to anything else in the childhood nature. You have any other recurrent dreams or fears in childhood? Tell about any fears of dark places, ghosts, heights, being alone. She says, there's one more dream that I remember. She says, I'm lost in some place. It's like a crowded station. We have gone there and suddenly you can't see anybody whom you know. Something else takes you somewhere else and you go in whatever direction it's pushing you. You're going with the flow and you're just being pushed in the flow of things. This was a very, very scary dream for me. I said, okay, there are a couple of aspects in this. Let us understand. I said, explain this a little bit more for me. I didn't understand. She says, like, we would reach some place, we would get off the train onto the platform. I would be holding my father's hand. But suddenly this group of people would be there and I would be pushed with the flow. You don't want to go in that direction and away from your people. And she really starts crying at that point of time. She says, I know I have to go there. I can see somewhere my father has gone ahead or that this crowd has pushed me and we are separated. I'm trying to hold on to his hand, but somebody pushes or the direction changes. I'm pushed in another direction. I'm no longer in contact with my father. And some other uncle who looks like my father is just suddenly holding my hand and taking me in some other way. I said, okay, explain what is the feeling in the dream. She says, this could have very easily happened to me. The feeling is like either in child cases of rape or kidnapping, or you know how they grab children from railway stations and take them into prostitution. This child is very innocent and they are lost and they're very helpless. So you can immediately see what is the inner age that she associates with the helplessness that she feels in the dream. It's that of a very small child who is very innocent and lost and helpless. They don't know what to do. They're going somewhere with their parent holding the hand. Suddenly something happens. The crowd pushes them in another direction and some other uncle is holding their hand and just taking them away. They can't express themselves. They can't even ask questions. You don't know whom to talk to. You don't know whether you can trust this uncle or not. Even the closest family member, he may say he's your uncle, but the closest family member, you may not be able to trust them. So she says, even now with my family, I cannot trust them with any news. How will they react? Even, and she reconnects it to the fact that they don't take me or my food allergies very seriously. I was expecting them to understand that I'm going through something. But they just turned around and said, it's all in your head. There is no such thing as a food allergy. And she really now breaks down and cries. And she says, it's a deep feeling of being very, very helpless. It's like being pushed into a direction in your life that you don't want to go to. And you can do nothing about it. And you're very young and innocent and lost and helpless. And there is an intense anger that comes along with that. She says all those things that I'm supposedly allergic to, like chicken and milk products and a lot of those other proteins, I really love those things. But suddenly now they're saying I've developed an allergy to it. It's like I'm just helpless. I cannot fight that also. I have to go with this veganism in this direction, and there's no other choice. Added on to this is this infertility thing and this difficulty to conceive. So it's like, this thing is much bigger than me and it has just taken me in its flow and I'm helpless to do anything about it. I have to decide this year, although I don't want to, I have to decide whether I have to have a child or not. I'm conflicted about it. Like even with the dreams, I'm helpless. This chap is just taking me somewhere. I don't even fight it. I'm just going. So she's saying, I'm just so passive and confused. It's pushing you and you're going helplessly in that direction. I could do lots, but I don't know why I'm not doing it. I'm quite passive about this whole issue, she says. The food as well as the conception. I said, okay, I understood this. Now, as I said, tell me your basic nature right from childhood. Let me tell you, at this point in the case checking, it was almost an hour and a half, and I had absolutely no idea what remedy, could emerge. I could not even understand a possible kingdom because there were a lot of issues that were coming up with family and group and food and looks and not being accepted. So I was just jotting down whatever was coming to my mind about possible remedies on the side, but I was just not able to follow any particular direction. There was a strong sense of self-loathing also. So I could see possible insect theme, possible animal themes as well. But I was just not able to pinpoint that, okay, the crux of this corresponds to this kingdom. I said, okay, tell me your basic nature. She says, I'm not a risk taker. I'm very cautious. I'm not a self starter. I like to do things that others don't do. I want to be a little apart. But even with this vegan journey, I'm a trainer. It's a different path altogether. There's a certain body of work that I have to do in order to be accepted in the industry. And yet, she says this miscarriage thing which happened, it was like an out of body experience. I wasn't in the body when the whole experience happened. I was like another person was watching me have that experience. It was very disconnected from that whole trauma. And she says, somewhere I'm not yet united with that part that got hurt in that whole trauma of the induced abortion. I just got quite separated from it. I'm quite disconnected. I cannot access that part of me which is separated because of the trauma of the miscarriage. Just letting the negative things just suck me down and, bring me to a kind of out of body experience. And she says, the confusion would go if I could connect to those parts of me which are separated because of these traumatic experiences. Is I feel it is an important part of me. It's maybe like an escape thing, I don't know, she says. I said, okay, tell a little bit more about your basic nature, because these are her thoughts about what she feels about the traumatic events that happen. I said, okay. So she says, family is something that is closest to you, and you don't trust anybody apart from the family. I was pretty much alone and I could not share with anyone. I was very lonely, very mistrustful of outside people and their opinions. I was very reserved. And people sense this mistrust, and they stay away and they don't connect with you, and you cannot connect with them. You can make out that they're not opening up, that they are reserved. And even if you try to connect, they stay away and you can't connect. And then you just end up not trusting people. I said, okay. Any other kind of fears right from childhood? She says, yes. About the child also, that I might damage that child who's going to be born into the world, whom she is yet to conceive, but also being dependent myself in some way, like being handicapped. If I get sick, I'm dependent and you're taking care of me. I'm helpless with no control over the body or the surroundings. I'm so scared of that situation of being stuck in that thing where I cannot do anything for myself and you're taking care of even the basic functions of for me. I'm neither here nor there. I'm just hanging somewhere in between life and death. You cannot escape that situation on your own also. You have a partner who's taking care of you to help you move, to help you get up and lie down, and you cannot even escape that situation. This is the kind of fear that is there for me right from childhood. I don't want this. This would be the worst. Another fear is that I might give birth to a child who grows up to be a criminal. This is again a kind of future fear that she connects to the present. She says, especially the kind of criminal who tortures or torments innocent children like a pedophile. She says, children are also people. They're not toys for entertainment of adults. Having a child is a very big responsibility. I always feel that I cannot control what the future brings. If your child does something like that in the future, it's a commitment. You are either successful, you cannot escape it. So because she said escape twice in two different situations, one about being dependent on a partner who takes care, and that situation you cannot escape. And here she talks about the escaping the responsibility. I said, cannot escape means what? She says, as once you have a child and you become a parent, you cannot escape that responsibility. You're trapped forever. I said, okay. Trap means what? What to take away from the situation? And just that trap means what? She says, trap means you're not able to escape that unpleasant situation. So I said, what is the situation like that you're trying to escape? She says, I can't move or do anything about that. There is no other solution. You have to just succumb to that. It's like the situation is taking you somewhere and you are helpless and you cannot feel anything. So this kind of connects to the feeling in the scary dream where you're taken away in another direction. I said, okay, and trap itself means what? What is the experience of being trapped? I understand that you cannot escape it. You have to succumb to it. You're helpless about it. But the being trapped itself, what is the experience of that? She says being tied down or bound. You only jumped into this well. No, suddenly, the the whole the whole mood in the case changed, and her tone and her body language and everything changed, and I had understood that I had somehow finally tapped on something which is basic. She said, you only jumped into this well, no, you cannot come out of it, nobody has pushed you into that, you cannot come out of this. And suddenly she got very, very animated. You went with all good intentions and it hasn't turned out like you wanted. Now deal with it. You cannot escape. You only wanted this. Now you only jumped into this well. Now deal with it. You have to give up at some point. Suddenly her voice changed like that. So I said, so what is this feeling in that giving up? She said, I don't want to feel anything. There is too much to feel. I want to rise and come up, but I know it's not possible. It's very difficult to think straight. I said, okay. At this point of time, something had clicked in my head. But I said, are there any other physical symptoms that you can think of that you have, physical modalities which are very, very important for us? She says, yes, I have sinus related headaches, like sun headaches. I have allergies related to food items. The fibromyalgia can flare up very suddenly. Sometimes I turn over in my sleep and I freeze and I cannot move. The muscles just spasm. I have cold hands and feet, and my vision is also affected. And she says, can you see one eye even now is smaller than the other? It's as if this one eye is actually as if quite squeezed. And for me, I couldn't make out any difference. But with this, when I looked up in my repertory and when I looked up in my specific materia medica, I came to the very interesting remedy and I sent her that. So the next day she calls up, she says, I must tell you something. Your yesterday's session really brought up too many things that I thought that I dealt with already. And I just, the whole day I spent in that state wherein all these feelings, they came up and all these emotions, they had come up and I had to deal with it because you asked about the family dynamics and the relationship with the mother. She's saying, even now in the morning, I'm feeling very unsettled. Overnight also, I was very, very unsettled. She says, I also have some kind of hive, some kind of rash, which is very, very itchy, which has come up. And a lot of sneezing was there overnight. And she says, one eye definitely feels smaller than the other. You must tell me that you can see that. I said, okay, I can see it. It's a little bit smaller. She says, this hives, I used to get in the past, but now it's like some sort of allergy or sting bite. It's there now. But she says, but when we spoke about the swimming pool and about the pit and everything, it reminded me that when I was learning to swim, whenever I could see the tiles at the bottom of the pool and they were clean, I was okay. When I couldn't see it, I used to feel very unsettled. You cannot see the bottom of the pool, it just seems endless and endless and endless and it goes. So I said, means what does that mean? It's like you don't know. You might not be there. You might continue to fall. And it's like a well and there is no bottom and you will continue to fall in that pool. So I said, okay, what do you mean you will fall into the well, no bottom, and you're unsettled? What does it mean? She says, I cannot see what is there. It's in front of me and I cannot see it. I cannot do it. I cannot jump into it. When I don't see the result, when I don't see the bottom of the pool, whatever, there is a very unsettling kind of fear which is there in my mind. She says it's this kind of pool which has no kind of vertical walls and you can't even see that it's there. You kind of fall into it, that kind of thing. So I said, in that whole experience, what is there happening in your body from head to foot? She says, my body just froze. It's all muddy around me. It's blurry and foggy and I'm sinking and I will get slowly sucked down there. I said, down there means where? She says, suck to the bottom of that. And I can't see the bottom or the end of that. It's a very kind of sinking feeling that I'm sinking in through something. I don't know where it will go. There is no feeling. It's just a kind of blackout. It's a very, very, very unsafe feeling. Something that you cannot control, that you have to accept, that you have to succumb to. You cannot see that there is a conclusion to it. I said, what is a sucked in? Because this was some sort of new thing that she was saying. She says, if you ever looked into a well, like the one here, if you have ever looked into it and, from far, if it has a wall, then you can at least hold that. But if it's like an open well, you can't see the bottom. There is a feeling around it that you will be sucked into it. It's very scary. It's very unsafe. And you don't want to go back. Immediately, you want to move back. You don't want to touch anything. You want to just rear back. You want to move away. You don't want to go in that direction at all. There is no control at that time. If I go there closer to it, I will just lose control. And so I don't go there and I'm here and I'm safe. Because if I go there, then things will go beyond my control, she says. So she did very well on the remedy. I was very, very happy. So 3 weeks later, when I spoke to her, she said, my sleep is definitely better. The food addiction is definitely better. Because I'm not awake at night, I'm not binge eating. I'm not eating crazily anymore. And for the first time, I actually see her smile. She says acne is still there. It's taking time to settle down, but it's better. I'm trying to work out. The tension is less. Watching TV is less. Not getting obsessed with things like before. I said, you said last time that the fibromyalgia might flare up. How is that feeling? She said the tiredness that comes, the unnecessary body ache, and the stiffness was worse initially when I began the remedy. Now, 10 days later, it's much lesser in intensity and able to do 5-kilometer runs from nothing to 5-kilometer runs. Sleep is normal. I feel much better. The appetite is good. My mood swings, getting to work. She says, they're all better. Work has been quite hectic and I'm able to keep up with it. I would say around 40% better in 3 weeks. She says, now I need to just completely cut out this trash eating. And she also, when she speaks to me, she doesn't feel as heavy as she was before. She feels quite light in her mood. The depression feels gone, actually. It's like going out in the sun, she says. So I think the remedy must be quite clear to a lot of people here by now. So 2 months later, when I had a follow-up, she says, I'm much, much better and sleeping better. The parents have come to visit her. So she says, I was a little stressed because they were living alone and I was very worried about them. And now I'm okay. They're also going for a plant-based diet like me. And my mother is quite open to that. She was not open before. So she says the acne has reduced and anything new that comes up is gone in a day. Fibromyalgia is much better. She's running and doing yoga. Sleep is settled. Digestion is better. Food addiction is more under control. There was a certain denseness in me, she says, which is a very interesting experience. She says it has almost disappeared. The body was feeling sluggish and waterlogged. Very strange. But now I'm much better. She says, I can see the difference. When I was in that waterlogged state, I couldn't experience that or I couldn't give words to it. But now that I'm better, I can see that I was feeling like that. Creativity is very high. Anxiety is much, much better. Even there was more anxiety inside than I realized, but that's all better, she says now. So I said, but the most important thing, the family dynamics, right? For us, it's very important. It's an important milestone for us. It's an important aspect that we have to consider in the follow-up. So I said, how are things with your mother and the family dynamics? She says things are much better with her. She's much open to trying out these things. I'm in a better place with her. The hypersensitivity to what she would say is much better. So my reactions are also better. So we cannot change everybody around us, but the remedy can certainly help us modulate our sensitivity and bring down the reactivity as well. So then those relationships and those interactions with the family members are not as thorny or as conflict ridden as before. And then they become automatically better. And then we feel that those people in front of us become more approachable and open. But it is us who, when having received the right remedy, become more open less reactionary, less hypersensitive, and much better and healthier in the moment reactions to those people. So then the dynamics get important. They get better. 6 months later on email, so till that point of time, I was speaking to her every 3 weeks or every month on Zoom. Then by email, she sends me an email saying, I'm much better in every way. I have realized that this year is not the year of conceiving. The whole pressure of the situation has gone. I have accepted it. We may conceive next year, we may not. We will see what the next year begins. So she's much more in the moment. She's not anxious about it. This was another big milestone that we had to touch upon. This was an important aspect of her life for her. She says, I will reach out on my own if there is a flare up of the fibromyalgia. For now, I'm much better. So I left a couple of doses of the remedy with her. And initially, she got weekly doses of the material of the remedy in 200C, then once in 15 days. Then, when I saw her improving, she started getting once in 3 weeks. And then now it's once in several months. She may just contact me and take the remedy. So it's one dose or maybe two doses after several months. So, and also the person who referred her to me says that she's much better, she's more productive, she's doing so much better. So the remedy that was given to her is Sarracenia purpura. And so she's by the point of, me preparing this case presentation, I have presented this case before. She had decided that having a child is not for her, but it was her own decision that she came up with. And it was not a forced decision for her. And she's including her mother in her journey, and they both are doing very well. She's very productive. She's doing her work. She's training for her runs. And so once in a while, she takes one dose of the 200, and all those flare-ups of the fibromyalgia have also reduced in intensity and frequency. So this is the case. And if we look at where Sarracenia is in the plant chart, Yakir plant chart, you will see that it is in subclass 4 or column 4. This belongs to the Sarracenialis. This belongs to the group Sarracenialis. And interestingly, Sarracenialis belongs to this is the column, the fourth column, which is of infancy. Sarracenialis also belongs to the infancy row, which is the row 2. So it has a double infancy kind of component in it. In the infancy column, it is in the infancy row. It's a very, very important remedy. It corresponds to the natrum line of remedies. So if we analyze the case from the remedy point of view, she has depression, acne, food allergies, and fibromyalgia. She's an extremely sensitive person. She has issues with her nutrition. She has allergy to certain food groups, and she's very angry that she has allergy to these food groups because she likes those food groups. She feels very vulnerable. She has issues with her family dynamics, issues with eating right from childhood and not being accepted by family right from childhood. These issues have persisted to adulthood. So now we need to get a remedy which is in the Yakir plant chart, which corresponds to this double infancy kind of positioning. And the subclass that has to do, or the column that has to do with nutrition, conception, family ties, relationship with the mother is the column 4 or the subclass 4 or the nutrition line. The nutrition line corresponds also to the natrum line of the periodic table of elements, or the remedies beginning from sodium to muriaticum. That line also corresponds to the infancy in the periodic table, and it corresponds here also to infancy within the Yakir plant chart. Infancy is a time that is spent in the mother's arms. It's a very vulnerable time. you're supposed to receive unconditional love from the mother at that point of time. And she seeks it because her mother is very, very blunt and rude as she perceives her. She seeks that softness or that nurturing from that one teacher who acts as a kind of maternal figure for her, and she gives her that. She's thirsty for this kind of maternal softness, and she gets it from that teacher who's like a maternal figure. Whenever there is this kind of lack or a perceived lack of uh, the nourishment that has to be given unconditionally to an infant for a healthy infancy, we can understand that the very soil in which, the family atmosphere is supposed to nourish you, and it's supposed to build a healthy foundation for a healthy adulthood. When that is absent, we can understand that this individual will be quite hostile and quite reactive. And this kind of lack can be seen in adulthood as emotional issues, depression, food allergies, even fibromyalgia, because the person becomes very reserved and tight and is not relaxed at all. So this Natrum line is a very, very important line of remedies for us. We can say it is our bread and butter remedies, because you will have a lot of women who are, for reasons of finding a job, maintaining that job and rising to a particular position in their job, might put, or postpone having a child for the future when they are more financially secure. And then those kind of women might be under pressure from society, from family, to have a child at that moment. And definitely, if they have taken hormones or they have postponed their natural motherhood, then they will come to you with this kind of confusion about whether to have a child or not, whether they have to comply to society or not, and whether the desire to give a child of their own to their husband, whether that they fulfill that or they deal with that situation healthily. You will find a lot of patients, women, coming to you for this. So, especially if they have had childhood issues like our patient, then we can understand that we are in the realm of the column 4 or infancy. The Sarraceniales are all those insectivorous plants which are growing on top of high mountain ranges where there is heavy rainfall, and where the rainwater washes away all those essential nutrients from the soil. And these plants over millennia have had to adapt and change and transform to become insectivorous by various traps, either active or passive, in order that they get the necessary the necessary protein which they need to prepare their food. Otherwise, they're able to get those protein elements from and those nutrients from the soil. But because these plants have, adapted themselves to growing in these harsh conditions, boggy conditions, maybe waterlogged conditions, or top of mountains where the rainwater actually washes off all the nutrients, they have kind of become this cross, somewhere a hybrid between a plant and a kind of animal that has to actually develop or evolve into having either active traps or passive traps, so that they can get their protein requirement and help them form their food, because there is also no sunlight in those areas. So although they have leaf-like structures, there is not enough sunlight to activate to the factories in the leaf that can form the food that they need to survive. So it's a kind of survival issue for the plant itself. So they have a high vulnerability because the environment is very hostile in which they are growing. So we can correlate this to the hostile environment that our patient perceived that she was surrounded with, where she didn't belong, where she was not wanted. The soil in which her ego or the growing individual has to grow and thrive was very hostile. So she was resorting to various ways to either do something nice to get accepted or to completely rebel and stay away from the family. And she has food issues growing up. She has fears, and we can see that they all begin in her early childhood, where she felt that the family atmosphere was very hostile. She had a very blunt, a very rude, a very non-maternal kind of hostile-like mother. She experienced her mother as being hostile. So we can correlate this very well at the level of the source to the plant itself. And the infancy line itself corresponds to sensitivity to a kind of perceived neglect from the family, especially the mother, and extreme emotional states whose roots can be traced back to this kind of hostile soil in which the individual grew up in the initial years. And there is a high vulnerability to perceived neglect or actual neglect. So as I was saying, within the Sarracenialis itself, the group, they have active traps where you have certain remedies like Drosera, which have the sticky kind of traps, and these are active traps. You have a Venus flytrap, which has an opening like this, and there are certain trigger hairs. And then when the insect touches that, it kind of closes up, trapping that insect there, big insects. Then you have inflated pouches like bladder warts, which are also very active trap. The insect goes in and it just closes. We come to those Sarracenialis which have passive traps, wherein you cannot even see, you're going there and there is a deep pit. You're trying to swim and that becomes a bottomless pit. You're in there and then you're suddenly caught and you have to succumb and you're dragged down into this kind of spiral where you cannot escape, and there is death all around you and you cannot see the bottom and you're just sucked in. This was the experience of our patient, which corresponds very well and very beautifully to the kind of passive traps. Now, in the passive traps, these are generally leaves which have become modified, like this picture, to become kind of pictures with a part of the leaf acting as a kind of lid. So she connects this to issues of conception. She feels that parenthood is some sort of trap. Your child in the future might do some unspeakable acts and forever trap you into this. You might give birth to a child who has some sort of impediment or a handicap or is autistic, and it's a lifelong responsibility that you're trapped in. Her own womb is hostile in a way because she has had one miscarriage. She felt that that child did not even want to be here. She isn't ready to be a mother because the infancy line is a very vulnerable, unprepared kind of row, and she lacks the ego strength to be able to be her own individual and to have to bear a child. So that unreadiness is reflected in that whole issue she has around conception. Also, if we look and explore her fears in childhood, she's on a train station and she's getting pushed in a particular direction. Somebody is taking her hand and leading her away from familiar people, away from her father. And you cannot trust the person whom you're going with. You cannot ask questions. She pictures herself as a very vulnerable young child lost on a railway platform, pushed aside or taken in another direction by a crowd. Somebody suddenly grabs your hand and takes you away. And she relates this to the torture and kidnapping or forced prostitution of young children, adults doing unspeakable things to children, adults who betray them in a way. So she's unable to trust those who are around her. The issues of trust and mistrust are a very deep seated theme of Sarracenialis. Because you have not received that unconditional love and support and guidance from the very soil that is supposed to nourish you, it leaves you forever mistrustful of the world at large around you, mistrustful of people around you. You cannot trust their intentions. They could betray you. They could be setting a trap for you. They could, in an active or a passive way, betray you in a way that your life changes forever and you're caught in a kind of spiral that leads to nowhere and leads to surely death. So this is what she connects very beautifully with. And in the passive traps, when I was looking up, she uses this word pitfall suddenly when we were talking on the phone when she called me up. So when I looked up the meaning of the word pitfall, it means like a hidden, unsuspected danger or difficulty. She says that the tube, that well could be there, and you sense a danger when you're going close to it, so you have to move back. You can suddenly fall into it. So this whole aspect belongs to the pitcher plants. In the pitcher plant remedies, you have a couple of remedies. So which one should I give her? You have the Sarracenia and you have the Nepenthes distillatoria. So when she speaks about this eye symptom, in which one eye is kind of squeezed and she feels the other eye is kind of more congested, when I looked that up, that particular, the symptom was there in this kind of congested thing that comes from overeating, this kind of sluggish digestion that comes from binging, this kind of waking up in the morning in a kind of confused fog, having that specific symptom where she feels that one eye is more, smaller or under some kind of pressure than the other. These kind of, I would say that these kind of effects are seen more in Sarracenia. It belongs to the leprosyphilitic miasm. Going one step forward, we only need to now reconcile the effect of the startling that the ambulance passing by her house causes for her, and the fact that if she decides on a particular work, then she really works very hard to finish it, but she cannot begin it. And right now she feels that everything has become routine and I have no interest in my creative interest in my work. So if we look at those two things, we have to understand now, this is where the chart really helps us in its genius. If we understand that the remedy is made from all those insects that are caught within it and the whole plant as well, that means it not only carries a plant aspect, it carries a insect or animal aspect along with it. And the insects which are in various stages of digestion, literally death is around her. The insects which are under various stages of digestion, the remedy carries all that energy as well. This is an invertebrate energy. We also saw that there is a crowd that suddenly comes and takes us in some direction. There is this kind of a little kind of hidden, stronger person doing something to a weaker, vulnerable person. That kind of energy is also there. All this can be explained by understanding that the remedy, the genius of this is that the remedy is made with the whole plant. So it certainly contains a lot of insect energy as well. She also, when I activated her state during the questioning and she reaches that particular point, she talks the next day of having hives or urticaria, which is also a very insect-like allergic response. So this fits. The invertebrate startling from sudden noises like the ambulance passing by also fits. The congestive state, as I was saying about the eye, that comes in the Sarracenia. The amelioration from physical exertion, which is a lot, which she runs, she jogs, she cycles, she swims. All this is a kind of amelioration from physical exertion. There is a kind of buildup of the toxins within her, congestion that happens because of all this eating. All that is better, when she does this hardcore exercise. There is also this strong emotional charge which is contained within her system. It is felt as a kind of engorgement, and this also is released with the help of the remedy. There is a strong anxiety of people dying around her. So these are, fulfilled by the invertebrate aspects of the insect which are contained in that remedy. So this is a wonderful, complex remedy, which we have somehow very easily to my mind when I look back. I see that every word that she spoke right from the beginning of her case, and I have given it verbatim. It is a slightly long case because of that, because the remedy is quite complex. We have to understand it from several points of view. I could have probably given her Nepenthes distillatoria, but we know from our clinical experience that Nepenthes is for more borderline, more extreme personalities than this. There is more aspects of cutting, mutilation, and self-harm in this. The self-hate because of the extreme toxicity of the soil in which they were supposed to be nurtured gives rise in adulthood or along the teenage to a very to an individual who is now having a borderline personality. You cannot trust them, and they don't trust their own family members, and they resort to a lot of activities like anorexia or binge eating and then not eating, and maybe even cutting themselves or mutilating themselves in order to show the depth of the feeling that they feel that this family has not accepted me and this is how I feel about myself. So these are all cries for help, and they must be considered and taken as such. And we now have important remedies that will help us deal with these individuals who have these extremely painful experiences in the beginning of their life. Surely these remedies help them dilute that extreme kind of muriaticum kind of feeling of resentment towards the family members, or feeling that family members resent you. And it kind of frees them to be good individuals who can fulfill the purpose in their life. So Sarracenia has more physical symptoms. Dionia muscipula, which is a venous flytrap, will have acute panic, and Drosera would have tubercular symptoms, bone issues. So this is how I have differentiated it. I just want to, explain a little about the PEM journey. I want to, first of all, congratulate the IPEMA group for most of my colleagues for putting in such beautiful cases. Mine is presentation number 7. So if you look at each of the presentations that have come so far, they have all been excellent. You can see for all of you how we have used the tools that we have learned, be it the plant chart, a Yaket plant chart, or the Gandhi animal chart, how we have used it further, how it has given us a lot of confidence to take care of, so-called difficult cases, pathological cases in our clinic. So when somebody calls us saying that somebody is having a new diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, would you be able to take the case? We are ready and we are confident to take. So we are not just doing that for ourselves, which is very gratifying and extremely, you feel very good that you're able to help people like this. But we are also extremely grateful we are able to facilitate deeper healing experiences for this kind of patient, for instance. There are many aspects of the case, like, how would you put, before you had the PEM method, how would you put a dream like, there is a group of people, I'm caught in a crowd and they're taking me in a different direction and you cannot trust anyone there. That particular aspect, you may prescribe some other remedy, but you may not understand how to fit this particular dream of hers or this feeling in the dream. So now with this PEM method, we have got these various tools where we can integrate this so far ununderstood concepts of our or aspects of our cases. We can go back and look at our cases that have done very well and see whether there are aspects in them that we didn't understand then, that we can understand very well through the PEM method now. So I've been following Dr. Gandhi's modules for 7 years. I've been teaching this PEM for more than 3 years. We have become from people homeopaths who used to be very kind of remedy centric. You were after the case and after understanding the remedy. Aaj ye remedy mila, aaj wo remedy mila. We are now finding that we are quite calm and very peaceful. We manage to be zen because we are focused on understanding the individual who is in front of us as a whole. We want to facilitate them to have a deeper experience of understanding themselves. So there's a lot of dilution in the state happening. I could not imagine previously in my clinic before, say, 7 years or 8 years, that I could make somebody 40% better with 3 doses of the remedy. I could never imagine that kind of rapidity of action and amelioration, and it is extremely gratifying. So I would urge you all to, more and more of you, to please take advantage of the courses that are being announced, that they've been announced. Please enroll yourself for the basic and the advanced course. And they're all wonderful teachers, and we will all be there to handle all your questions. And I cannot wait for you all to have these kind of experiences in your own clinic. And the PEM finally is the larger umbrella under which we understand our patients, our materia medica. We somewhere help us to understand ourselves deeper. And I would really urge you all to enroll in large numbers, and would really love to see most of you during the basic and advanced courses. And I would like to thank Dr. Meeta and her team for giving me this opportunity for sharing a case from my clinic. And we'll see you very soon. Thank you very much.